Today's episode of Inside Gaming Daily is brought to you by Bombas, so you can get 20% off your first purchase at bombas.com/insidegaming.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside for Wednesday.
It's Wednesday, it's the middle of the week, top day, and since we're still free in America, I'm gonna give it my best. For democracy.
Yeah,
Brian?
A little rumbling going on.
You in a busy room?
yeah, sorry, it cut out for some reason. I can hear you.
That wasn't the problem. So, the backlash to Blizzard after it made the controversial decision to suspend a Hearthstone player has really snowballed over the last day.
Yeah, we got a part 2. It's coming for you. So, U.S. senators are criticizing the company, and so are current and former employees.
Meanwhile, even more Hearthstone players are speaking out in favor of protesters in Hong Kong in what looks like a continuing revolt among its player base.
Yeah, but does it actually mean anything? That's the scary part. The national media also picked up the story too, so at this point the whole thing has turned into a full-fledged PR disaster.
Blizzard's used to them, don't worry about it. Yeah, at this point, Blizzard is even making EA look good.
As we talked about yesterday, the whole thing started after Blizzard suspended a player over the weekend for making a statement supporting anti-government protests in Hong Kong.
Tell us more, Brian.
So it happened during a stream of the Hearthstone Grandmasters competition when the Hong Kong player Blitzchung Ng appeared on an official Taiwanese stream for the game. During the broadcast, he took off a gas mask he was wearing and said, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age." And that is the genesis of all of this.
The stream was abruptly cut and Blizzard quickly stripped him of his prize money for the season. Also, for some reason, I want to buy a Mitsubishi. I don't know why. He's also been banned from Grandmasters play for a full year. In a statement from Blizzard, they cited an internal rule that said players can't engage, quote, in any act that in Blizzard's sole discretion brings you into public disrepute, offends a portion or group of the public, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image.
So according to the way that's written, Blizzard is kind of justified, and yes, all the athletes agreed to those terms by entering the tournament, but boy, this is a bad look. Optics are just bad all around, so that didn't sit well with a lot of players because just as quickly, people have rallied around Blitzchung.
A hashtag Blizzard Boycotts started trending on Twitter as people vowed to quit playing all Blizzard games.
Yeah, people started posting anti-Blizzard artwork, photoshopping the company's logo onto the Chinese flag, and also onto Winnie the Pooh, which is a shot at Chinese President Xi Jinping.
We only call him president in like a light sense.
Great leader, kind of?
Dictator for life?
There was a meme that he looked like Winnie the Pooh, and he was so dissatisfied by this that he had it stricken from the internet.
He does look like him. That is a good meme.
Turns out when you control the government and there's no actual freedom of speech, you can actually remove something from the internet.
Well, as long as Disney keeps Winnie the Pooh around, we're gonna keep making those jokes. They may kill him off pretty soon. Meanwhile, an animation on Reddit that criticized Blizzard via an Overwatch parody got more than 100,000 upvotes. Good job.
Speaking of Overwatch, there's also a move online to make Mei a symbol of the Hong Kong protests with photoshopped images of the character going viral.
And what about the employees at Blizzard, Brian?
They are mad too. On the Blizzard campus in California, there were apparently angry employees. They covered up 2 of the company's core values that were inscribed on metal plates in the ground. This was tweeted out by former Blizzard employee Kevin Hovdestad, who tweeted a photo of the values that were covered up, and he wrote, "Not everyone at Blizzard agrees with what happened. Both the Think Globally and Every Voice Matters values have been covered up by incensed employees this morning."
Yeah, it's important to note too that photo, that person that tweeted it didn't take that photo. They were sent it by another anonymous employee. So tensions are obviously pretty high and people are trying to voice their support, but trying to do it in a way that doesn't get them in too much trouble. However, it is boiling over a little bit. There was a photo circulating on Reddit of several Blizzard employees holding umbrellas in the plaza of the Blizzard campuses in what looked like a show of support for Hong Kong protesters.
The umbrella is significant because it's been used by many Hong Kong protesters over the years and has become a symbol of the movement.
Yeah, like what you hold to prevent the tear gas canisters from bonking you on the head.
Or the, cameras from facial recognizing you and taking your whole family away.
Other Hearthstone players have continued protesting China during tournaments.
A team from the American University that was competing in the Collegiate Hearthstone Championship held up a sign that said, "Free Hong Kong, boycott Blizzard," during the broadcast. It was quickly cut by Blizzard. Surprise, surprise.
And it's even spilling over into actual real-world politics. This isn't just Reddit, is it, Ryan?
Some U.S. lawmakers are not happy with Blizzard either. They were condemned by both Republican and Democratic senators for their decision, so not a good look for you. Everybody enjoys a good pile on, and everyone's enjoying piling on Blizzard right now.
Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon wrote on Twitter that Activision Blizzard showed, quote, sorry.
He started by clearing his throat, spat on the floor.
He actually wrote out ahem. It's very weird. Activision Blizzard showed, quote, "It is willing to humiliate itself to please the Chinese Communist Party." He added, quote, "No American company should censor calls for freedom to make a quick buck."
And Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican from Florida, tweeted, quote, "Recognize what's happening here. People who don't live in China must either self-censor or face dismissal and suspensions. China using access to market as leverage to crush free speech globally." There's also some other political stuff going on here in the US. so this could also be a nice little distraction of, no, look over here.
Yeah,
so.
we all get to be mad at them.
It brings everybody together like no Princess Bride remake. It's something we can all agree on.
When I grew up, it was always boo communists bad, red scare. And now it's like, oh no, they're great as long as they give us money.
Yeah, they make cheap consumer goods for us and they buy our loot boxes. So it turns out it's all good.
It's more difficult for my little baby brain to twist these things in my head.
The difference is communist nations that we used to hate weren't worth any money. And now they are.
They used to be poor.
Speaking of, if you're an American company like Activision Blizzard is, you don't want to attract a bipartisan group of senators who might be inclined to take a closer look at you, especially with loot boxes being the hot item of the day. And guess what Hearthstone's entire business model is based on? So yes, there might be American politicians that see some easy points to gain with their voters by cracking down on a company that's both caving to China and selling gambling to kids. Not a good look! These are things you should think about before you just ban a player and yank all of his winnings back.
Speaking of which, during a live stream with fans Tuesday, Blizzcon said that he was not sorry for what he did on the stream. He said, quote, "Today, what I have lost in Hearthstone is 4 years of time, but if Hong Kong loses, it would be a matter of a lifetime." Well, freedom fighter.
The Muhammad Ali of our time.
Except he just moves cards around.
Just pushes cards.
Yeah. Floats like a butterfly, sits like a bee.
So why is Blizzard doing this? So we covered this a bit yesterday, but it deserves a second look. So we're gonna look at how important China is to Blizzard's bottom line, and it's a little more complicated than people might think. For starters, this is something we neglected to mention yesterday. They are partially owned by the Chinese game publisher Tencent, which has a 5% stake in Activision Blizzard. That phrase partially owned is tough. I mean, yes, they do own a stake in it, which means they can sit at their investor meetings and stuff. They might get a vote, but that's a far cry from being a major force in determining the company's agenda.
Another thing to consider too is we also know that they're developing the upcoming mobile Diablo Immortal with the Chinese company NetEase.
That's much bigger. As for revenues, in the second quarter of this year, Activision Blizzard earned $173 million from the Asia Pacific region. That accounted for about 12% of its $1.4 billion worldwide revenues.
That's not nothing, but
Yeah.
it pales in comparison to the $764 million it made in the Americas during the same quarter.
It's worth mentioning that that's where we are right now. Diablo Immortal is co-developed with a Chinese company, and it's targeting the Chinese market pretty hard. So it's a huge growth market that they're trying to push into. Speaking of, all of this is happening exactly when Activision Blizzard is seeking approval from the Chinese government for the Call of Duty mobile game. Because that's how it works there. You actually have to get you have to get Chinese government approval for every piece of media that gets released in that country because it has to fit their, nationalistic standards.
So needless to say, this has snowballed out of Blizzard's control, pun. In an effort not to piss off China and its huge market, they've now enraged a much bigger share of their audience.
Just like yesterday, we reached out to Blizzard for comment, but haven't heard back. In China though, Blizzard's official Hearthstone account on Weibo condemned Blitzchung and said, quote, "We will always respect and defend the pride of our country."
What else did they do, Brian?
They also took the very unusual step of closing down the Blizzard subreddit, at least temporarily, but I checked today, it was back up. Most of the top posts, this will not surprise you, were from people furious at Blizzard.
Is Blizzard the one that controls the Blizzard subreddit, or is it a fan community?
That's true, I don't know.
Typically, companies don't like to be owners of off-site fan communities because they don't own it, so they're not responsible for it.
That's fair enough. Yeah, somebody took it offline for a while, but yeah, it's back now.
It's a similar story over at the Hearthstone subreddit too. One of the moderators even announced they were stepping down as this is no longer a company I want to support or follow.
Okay, so now here's the really interesting question. How much will this actually hurt Blizzard? We checked their stock price this morning, and the controversy doesn't seem to have affected it because they don't care. Investors just want money, and they definitely want Blizzard breaking into China, so this is not an issue that investors really care about.
Meanwhile, on Twitch, World of Warcraft was the third most popular game as of this morning. So there is a chance that this is a lot of internet outrage that doesn't translate to the real world, like the so-called boycott of Borderlands 3 on the Epic Games Store or anything similar like that. But the bigger question too is what sort of ramifications will this have for the fan base, the people who actually support Blizzard games in the future that pretty much were there since the beginning. This is a dark mark, I feel.
And it's one that's gonna last for a while. The New York Times is writing about Blizzard right now and citing what the Chinese government isn't the best look going forward. It is really hard in this case to predict long-term consequences for Blizzard at this point, but we all have pretty long-term memories for these sorts of things, and you can bet that whenever their next game comes out, there are some people that will hesitate. They'll probably end up buying it anyway, because God bless us, we're a bunch of ravenous consumers.
In a similar way, EA over the years has gotten a reputation for overly monetizing its games, which really came to a head a couple of years ago with games like Battlefront 2. And while EA is hardly alone in the love of loot boxes, it still hasn't shaken that reputation with the fans.
Yeah, in Blizzard's case, it really doesn't want to get a lasting reputation for siding with an authoritarian regime. We're cracking down on protesters just seeking, the right to vote, which used to be something that America cared about.
It's also worth noting that BlizzCon is coming up in a few weeks.
That's the real bad thing.
That's gonna be fun. Buy your digital tickets now.
There's no way they can avoid crowd shots, and people are gonna have have signs.
I can't wait. It's gonna be the biggest show.
There's gonna be red shirt guys out the ass getting up and asking things on mic. So they might have to do things like cut all Q&As. They might have to cut all crowd shots. It's gonna be a creepy show. And that is the lack of free speech infiltrating everything. Because you have to do damage control because it's affecting your bottom line. It's scary. Really try to contextualize this. If Blitzchung got up and said, you know what? I'm sick of all these women trying to vote. And they were like, what the fuck, dude? And then they cut the cam, yanked his prize winning. I don't know that everyone would necessarily be as outraged. By the rule that he agreed to, it's the same kind of violation.
Of course.
He's injecting a potentially damaging political statement into his platform where it wasn't asked or didn't belong.
Right. It's also Blizzard as a company didn't ask to get pulled into the world of politics. As a company, they probably don't have an opinion on this thing, while individuals do. That's why you always see a lot of people saying, my views do not reflect that of my company. But in these times, people want you to pick a side. There's too many moving parts for a company as big as Blizzard to make any sort of statement other than, we're just trying to protect ourselves as a business, but overall, it's just not a good look.
This is me speaking a little personally here. It would be nice if businesses could operate purely as a business and avoid all of the implications of who they're doing business with and the money they're taking in return, but sometimes there is actually right and wrong. I'm not a political scholar. I'm certainly no historian. I don't know the full complexities of the relationship between Hong Kong and China. But holy crap, this is a pretty bald violation of human rights. And when you start suppressing mention of that because you're in business with them and it's in your business interest to make them happy, then yes, the resulting situation is you are supporting a regime that violates human rights. Then again, a lot of people all over the world do. So it gets complicated. I think the very clear and obvious statement is this is a huge bad look for Blizzard and they didn't really handle it in the best and most delicate way they could have.
The best we can hope for is that this is all just guerrilla marketing for Cyberpunk.
I'm sure that's it, yeah.
Because God, it feels like it.
The Cyberpunk trading card game coming 2023? Yeah. What's the Cyberpunk version of Gwent? Actually, Gwent is pretty
Probably
simple.
Hearthstone,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, have a good weekend. It's only Wednesday.
Yep. Today's episode of Inside Gaming Daily is brought to you by Bombas.com because unlike Blizzard, we here at Inside Gaming can take money and do the right thing at the same time. Maybe that's not exactly true because Bombas is the one actually doing the nice thing. We're just getting paid, but we can still claim credit for it. What's the nice thing they're doing, you ask? Well, for every pair of socks that they sell, they're also donating a pair of socks to a homeless shelter because, believe it or not, socks are the #1 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters. And Bombas is on a mission to change that. They've created the most comfortable socks in the history of feet, which, wouldn't you know it, is a very long history indeed. For every pair of socks purchased, Bombas donates 1 pair to someone in need. Designed with special comfort innovations, colors, patterns, lengths, and styles, Bombas are perfect for the whole family because maybe your whole family has feet and they need socks on those feet. So there you go. You can also save 20% on your first purchase if you go to bombas.com/insidegaming. That's bombas.com/insidegaming to buy some socks and donate a pair of socks to someone in need at the same time. So thank you, Bombas, for your generosity, and thank you for that savings discount. Bombas.com, 20% off. Thank you for putting nice things on your feet, and thank you for supporting good causes.
He's also been banned from Grandmaster's play for a full year.
Are they hammering outside?
Let me go check real quick.
Gonna go crack some legs. Do you want us to continue reading? Oh, he's gone.
He goes out there and goes, please stop. And he goes, I told those to stop. Yeah, I showed them.
They won't be doing that anytime soon.
No, please stop. You're making so much loud. You're making me cry. Look at my pants. Look at my pants. I'll take my pants off for you. I'll show you a dance. For you. Look at my tiny little penis. Please stop. Yeah, so in a statement, Blizzard said that they cited an internal rule that said players can't engage. Politics usually do not mix, but Blizzard really stepped into a hornet's nest this weekend, and we just can't help but talk about it.
Oh yeah, this is it. This is it, boys. This is what you've been talking about on your Reddits and your 4chans. Politics done caused a censorship in games. This is what everybody's mad about, right? Not women that just don't wear thongs anymore.
Lots of